This is Tyrese and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
What's up, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Golden, and joining me today is Michael J. Facci. Facci, fun one for the listeners because this week we had so many mailbag questions, we had to expand it to 5 episodes. Only planned on doing 3, but we had 32 questions coming into this.
I gotta say, I love the passion from Pacer Nation. Middle of June, when the season, our season at least, has been done for some time. That's when you know that people are getting hyped for the offseason. 2 months. Oh my God, time's flying. That's crazy. It feels like a lifetime ago already. It's been a long year. But I was really excited to see the mailbox overflowing, and that just means that free agency trades, they're right around the corner, and that's always an exciting time.
No, absolutely, Facci. And I will say this, first and foremost, we found out on Friday afternoon that the Indiana Pacers have been in trade talks with Trey Murphy III. And I knew when that was reported by Mark Stein on his Substack that this was something to keep an eye on. We've been hinting at it a little bit. We've had a few discussions about it. And now that it's been actually reported by a reporter that, you know, Mark Stein is working with Jake Fisher, they were definitely in on the Zubats interest from the Pacers. So I'm going to say that there's probably some positive, or not positive, but there's some truth to this report. Whether it happens or not, that'll, to be determined. But there's a lot of excitement from the fan base about Trey Murphy III. So we got 6 to 7 questions strictly on Trey Murphy III.
We really did. And, we had seen some of the signs before with Halliburton, Trey Murphy, at the Fever game. And that's been heating up for a while. But yeah, to really, hear that it seems like the Pacers and Pistons, 2 serious suitors for Trey Murphy III, to me, as you really feel like this could potentially happen. I do think that, you put a tweet out there, could the Pacers beat this package? I didn't think the Pistons package was that great, but I think that
put out there, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That was put out there, Beef Stew, Ron Holland, some other, I can't remember who the player was that was just salary filled.
Marcus Sasser.
Oh, Marcus Sasser. He's just thrown in there. And 2 first-round picks.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm like, does that really move the needle for New Orleans? I feel like, yeah, the Pacers could beat that, but it's a matter of then do you want to break up, part of your core 7 or so? So these are some great questions. I don't want to spoil anything and answer that. Let's just get into the questions if you're ready.
Yeah. I would just say this real quick. I think one of the reasons why Detroit probably feels a little bit more connected is because Troy Weaver was originally with the Detroit Pistons and he's now working under Joe Dumars with the New Orleans Pelicans. So he might have more interest in someone like Beef Stew, Marcus Sasser, Ron Hall. I don't know which players he drafted, which ones he didn't, but I know he did draft Beef Stew from comments that were put out there.
Yeah.
So it's like if he likes his own guys that he once drafted, maybe there could be some reason for that. But
sure.
They're apparently looking for a massive return. So we'll get into it. So go ahead and get us kicked off.
All right. Question 1, B_Reed26. Do you think the Pacers will actually trade for Trey Murphy III?
Yeah, this is a good one to kind of get us started because we're going to go into all details of a trade. But, as I think about it, I do kind of wonder if they're going to at least explore it, right? They've already been mentioned to be linked to him. It's kind of funny that Tyrese was talking with Trey Murphy III at a Fever game. I think they've liked him for a while, and they probably liked him during the draft, just weren't sold on him yet because he was a little bit under the radar in the draft. I mean, people liked him, but not to the level of hey, he's a lottery level player because he got drafted 17th overall. So, no, I think that there's probably interest, but I do think that the Pacers probably lean more towards the side of cautious before they break up this core 7. That's my gut feeling.
So that I'm right on board with you. I put it at about 35 to 40% chance that I feel like the Pacers make this deal. So to me, it's basically, I'm not doing the cop out. Oh, it's 50-50. I'm saying that they probably don't. I just think that if you're going to make this deal, you're emptying out all of your assets. And I feel like this is also a group that we haven't even seen Zubats with this group yet. So, are the Pacers really just going to do back-to-back potential blockbuster type trades? I don't know, but I definitely think that they are making calls, having conversations, and never say never.
All right, Butch, let's move on to question number 2. This one comes from Christopher Waltemeyer. He said, if you could only give up Jarace and Ben Sheppard for Trey Murphy III, would that be enough? who would you actually be willing to include in a Murphy deal?
If that could be enough, that would be great, but it is not enough. So salary-wise, added up, it's about $13.5 million with Jarace Walker and Ben Sheppard together. Now, Trey Murphy III is going to make about $27 million next year. So you're talking about roughly about 50% of that salary. So that would not work. Plus, I would imagine there's got to be at least 2 to 3 first-round picks included in there. So now you're still missing additional salary in order to be able to facilitate this deal that would have to come from one of these 3 players, either like an Obi Toppin, a TJ McConnell, or an Aaron Nesmith. And that's where things then get really tricky and start to feel like an overpay. So to me, it just feels like, like that's a lot. But if you're asking, hey, who would I be willing to include out of those 3? I think I'd lean TJ McConnell just because I feel like he plays the fewest minutes out of this group. He's the oldest. I feel like Aaron Nesmith would be very hard to replace. Obi Toppin's a really good fit. I mean, look, McConnell would be hard to replace too. Like, you can't get something without giving up something. So it wouldn't be easy, but I look at McConnell as the guy who probably over the next few years plays a little bit of a lesser role rather than playing a bigger role. But how do you view it?
Yeah, so just to kind of be clear, because I've heard people talk about this, and I think there's just a big misunderstanding of how finances work in trades right now with the new CBA. So I've talked about it on here before, but if people are just now tuning in, I want to make sure that I clarify this. So the Indiana Pacers, they're flirting around like 201, 202 million right now with what they currently have on the books. So if you were going to make a trade for Trey Murphy III, you can have an imbalance of salary, right? It can be guys that make less. It can be, for example, it can be a Jarace Walker and a TJ McConnell. And that is enough salary because here's how this works. There's a difference between being a luxury tax team and a first apron team. And the first apron, I think it's estimated to be around $209 million. So if the Pacers are around that 201, 202 threshold, that means they have about $7 million or a little bit more that they can, take lopsided wise in a trade. So if you include Jarace plus TJ, that's around $20 million. You bring back Trey Murphy III, it's going to be a $7 million difference. As long as you don't cross into that first apron, you can make that deal and not have to give up 3 players for one just to make the salary match. So I do want to say that does make sense in terms of player wise, what I would do. And I kind of agree with you on including TJ McConnell in the trade versus an Obi Toppin or an Aaron Nesmith. Now, look, I don't understand why New Orleans would want that, but from a Pacers perspective, right? The thing for me that I continue to come back to is TJ McConnell is going to be 34 this year. And maybe he just turned 34 in March, so he's already 34. He'll be 35 by the end of the season. He's a very loyal part of this franchise, and these kind of players just don't get moved often. But at the end of the day, if you can keep Nesmith and Toppin on this team, and all you have to do is try to find a backup point guard to replace TJ, you're not going to be able to replace what he means to the fan base, and you're not going to be able to replace what he does specifically. But there's a world where you get significantly more talented by moving off of him. So that's why I'm thinking in my head, it feels shady to say this because I know they're not going to do it, and I think it's a little bit narrow-minded to not do it. But I would strongly consider trading TJ McConnell if it got you Trey Murphy III and you didn't have to give up Nesmith or Toppin.
I'm right there with you. That's what I was saying. One of those players has to be included in the deal. You're not going to be able to do this deal without one of those players in it. And I just feel like you can trade TJ McConnell without it being we didn't need him. No, of course. TJ McConnell's awesome. He's been awesome. He means a lot to the team. We've always said time and time again, he means more to this team than what he's ever going to produce on the court. Mm-hmm. It's the total package of it. I mean, think about the NBA Finals when nobody could buy a bucket, and TJ McConnell was the only player that scored in that third quarter when Halliburton went down. It was he was the guy that refused to give up. But I also just feel at the end of the day, you're trying to win a championship, right? It's not all about what about, the guy, everyone's going to miss him and the fan base. Nope. You know what? You win a championship. TJ McConnell will be one of the first guys you'll want to have his finger fitted for an honorary ring. Like that's someone that you would value, but you got to include one of those guys in a deal. And I just feel like TJ McConnell is the oldest, plays the fewest minutes. He's at a position that the Pacers already have, Halliburton and Nembhard at, even if you're going to play Nembhard at the 2, obviously. So, yeah, a tough decision has to be made. If I was the GM, that's the decision I'll make.
Yeah, and I would just do Jarace and TJ plus all the picks. Like,
Yeah.
like that's what's kind of
Ben
crazy.
Sheppard's not going to hold up a deal. It's
No, and you don't really want to give up 3 for 1 in this situation.
That guts your depth. It really hurts. And look, Shep played well January on. He really did. You'd like to see a little bit more of it. You would.
Yeah, because if you think about it from this perspective too, like you're starting Trey Murphy III, you're bringing Nesmith off the bench with Ben Sheppard, with Obi Toppin. That's a pretty solid 8 right there. And then you just got to find a point guard on the market to kind of be that backup point guard. I mean, that is not easy, and it would still be something you have to address. But
you're not going to find a TJ McConnell. We did our list. It's a bunch of players that are all right. No one's going to bring the impact that McConnell's going to bring in, but all those players are going to be minimum contract guys, not making $11 million a year. So it's a trade-off.
Yeah. And I mean, and like, here's what you could also do. Like, if you think about a playoff rotation, you can just stagger the minutes with Tyrese and Andrew. And then Andrew kind of plays, like, a lot of people would say, why don't you just start Nesmith and bring Nembhard off the bench? I can already hear people saying that as they're listening to this podcast. That would not make any sense in terms of the secondary playmaking that you want. And this team just loves point guard depth. There's no doubt about it. Like, they love having 2 point guards on the floor at all times if they can. How many times do we see McConnell out there with Halliburton, with Nembhard? So I just personally think there's ways they can go around this and figure it out. Like, even if it is like a Tyus Jones, like if somebody knows that they're actually going to get significant minutes behind Halliburton as our backup point guard, I think that would be more enticing than say, hey, you want to be our 3rd string guy? Like, we talked about Mike Conley, right? Like, I'm not saying Mike Conley's going to like hold up or anything like that, but he's 38, 39 years old. He's definitely a veteran, but if he wants to spend one final year trying to compete for a championship, like, do you not think that would be a pretty solid backup point guard? Like, he was good enough for the Timberwolves when he came back. He's just not a starter anymore because he's getting older. But as a backup, I think he's fine.
Yeah, I think he's fine. Look, McConnell averages like somewhere between 16 to 18 minutes per night. You're talking about Mike Conley giving you maybe 10 minutes. 10 minutes a night, maybe. Yeah, exactly. You could very much live with that. And the guy has been around the block. So there's ways that you can make up for losing McConnell, but of course, there's going to be plenty of nights out of the year where he would absolutely be missed. But next question we have from Nick Ogren said, if the Pacers trade for Trey Murphy III and it costs Obi Toppin or Aaron Nesmith, how do you replace what those players bring?
Okay, so let's go ahead and kind of answer both of his questions together here because it also says, what is the plan to replace Obi's skill set at the 4-5 if he's traded for Murphy? So let's just talk about both of them real quick. Yeah, this is tough. Like, I think if you move off of Nesmith and you bring in Trey Murphy III, like, that's kind of that's how you replace him. Like, I think that's pretty obvious. Like, that's what you do. And sure, like, I wrote about this today on Pacers on SI, like, you're going to lose a defensive edge by bringing in Murphy over Nesmith, but you're getting a much better offensive player.
Definitely.
And it's not like Murphy is like a slouch defensively, but he just isn't as intense or as aggressive as Nesmith. So you're losing that defensive edge. So there is something there to worry about. But I think with Toppin, like, this is why I was like so adamant, like, I would include Nesmith over Toppin just because look at the forward depth for this Pacers team after Toppin. You got Johnny Furphy, who's hurt. And then you're maybe saying, oh, Jarace, let's slide you down to the 4, which they've already converted him to a 3. So we know that probably is not going to be a great transition. And then it's like, oh, we've got Potter and Huff. Okay, like our options are so thin. You're going to be looking at somebody on the veteran minimum to come play power forward. Like, we talked about some names out there, and I don't know if he would be a vet minimum, but like, somebody like a Harrison Barnes, like that doesn't even come close to what Obi Toppin brought you. And like Obi Toppin was able to play small ball 5 as well. So it's like, who's somebody that can do that you get back in a trade if you were to trade Toppin? Now you would have a little bit more money to spend But it's interesting to me.
It is. So, to start with the first look, it's going to be hard to replace those players. They both bring specific skill sets. I feel like Obi is like, I remember when the Pacers were trying to build that team in transition. They got the top 3 players in transition. It was Halliburton, Obi Toppin, and Bruce Brown. Like, they knew the style that they wanted to play. And I feel like Obi obviously has had his best years in Indiana. So that's been great. Nesmith has been like the glue guy. He's been that guy that, like, you might call him like the 5th starter, but you see when he's not out there or if he's hurt, a lot could fall apart. Like, he holds a lot together. When you talk about who could you potentially bring out there in a trade, I brought up Kenrich Williams, and I feel like that's someone before that, like, could play the 4 or the 5, could shoot the 3 ball well. No, he's not gonna be like, running in transition and dunking it like Obi Toppin. Like, no, very few players can be as much of a high flyer as Obi, but he actually is. Kenrich Williams at $7 million. It's about half of what Obi Toppin's making. So I feel like there are some options out there, guys. Like I still can't pronounce his last name, but Mamu, Sandro, from the Raptors was he's someone that is on a player option at $2.8 million.
Yeah.
He could play the 4 and the 5. Averaged 11 points, 5 boards, shot 52%, 39% from 3. So, like, he's someone that I feel like is versatile, at least. But, yeah, any player that you lose is obviously, like, someone who's been with this team for the last few seasons, knows their teammates. They know, like, their teammates know where they're going to be. That part is always going to be tricky, but happens to every team eventually.
What's really funny is as soon as I sent this back over to you to kind of reply to the question. In my head, I was like, I'm going to come up with 2 names real quick because I was like, off the top of my head, who would be a good backup for Obi? I was like, I think Kenrich Williams is number 1, and then Sandro probably 2. And then you said them both. And I was like, all right.
Absolutely. Look,
yeah.
you and I, we've been doing this for a while, so we can read each other's
we just did the list too, and I just wrote about them,
did.
so it's fresh.
Sure.
It's fresh at the top of our brain. But like
it is.
Kenrich Williams, like Kenny Hustle, like we've talked about him a little bit, but I think defensively, like he gives you more than Sandro does. But like Sandro is like sneaky good defensively. Like,
yeah,
I think he might be better guarding in space than Toppin would be. He just isn't the rim. Like, he doesn't, like, Toppin's not a great rim protector, which is just kind of crazy to me because he can jump and like touch the top of the backboard. So I don't understand why he can't be a better one. Maybe he can be as time goes on, but like, I'm thinking like Sandro can shoot and pass and cut and kind of plays that same style, and they would have a little bit more flexibility to kind of replace Toppin with that for a lot cheaper. So that could be an upgrade, but it's hard to replace the chemistry that's already been developed between Obi and this roster, and of course Nesmith with this roster. That's what is going to kind of put you behind the 8 ball just a little bit, because if you look at this Knicks team that just won the title, right? Like, they have, like, the guys that they have on their roster, they've all played together for the last couple of years, right? Jordan Clarkson's probably like the only like semi-new Jose Alvarado. Like, those are the only 2 like new fits, but like the Landry Shamits and Mitchell Robinson off the bench, like they just Deuce McBride, like their top 8-9 guys, like they were already kind of a part of this core. So it's just, you bring in a little guy on like the margins that made a difference. Alvarado made a huge difference in Game 4, so you just never know. But I that's kind of how I think I would go about that.
Yeah, I think so. I think the league's changed where it's not so much just about like throwing 3 really good guys together. It's like who fits together, which team has the most chemistry, and I feel like that's been the Pacers' strength the last few years. I mean, last year tossed that one out the window, but the previous few years, that's how it had been. So, So next question, we'll skip to number 5 so we answer those together. _Wanderlust_1 or Hallie Oop to Toppin. Said, if New Orleans values picks more than players, would you trade TJ McConnell, Jarace Walker, Ben Sheppard, 3 first-round picks, and 2 pick swaps for Trey Murphy III?
It's a lot. It's a lot, and that's kind of why I said I probably wouldn't include Sheppard in the trade, just because you do, like earlier when we were talking about it, like that's why I would not include Sheppard in the trade. If you did include Sheppard in the trade, you could include getting back Yves Missi, right? Which that would be a great backup center for Zoo. But it's like that the depth you really want. I mean, here's the thing. That is all your future picks you can trade. And so
that's it. The clip is empty.
And at the end of the day, right, if they're looking for a Desmond Bane type package, that was 4 first and a swap. the Pacers can't give them 4 firsts in a swap. So,
Nope.
like, that to me is like, why would the Pelicans want this trade unless they really value the Pacers picks like later down the line, which, I mean, maybe they could be good if you don't think the Pacers will be able to sustain this, but honestly, like, I would probably, close my eyes and say yes and try to get it down to 2 firsts and 2 swaps. But if it's a stipulation of 3 and 2 for that package, I'd probably say no for 3 for 1, including the 5 picks. But I would try to compromise a little bit on this deal. I think the deal, like the structure, is decently in place.
I try and compromise. It's too many picks for me. You can't do it. Cannot do it. I just feel like at that point, Indiana will have no assets left. If something happens, they're then just like, knock on wood, like you never want to have your one big injury away from all of a sudden just being in trouble and knowing that you're in one of those, like, I don't know, like one of those scenarios where like the Clippers when like all their picks were just being like owed elsewhere, it's just not a good move after they made the Paul George trade. So I feel like it's just too rich for my blood. I think that if there was a scenario that maybe if it's like McConnell, Shep, Jarace, and like 2 firsts, like, yeah, sure. 2 firsts and a swap. Okay. Yeah. When you're talking about 3 firsts and 2 swaps and those players, can't do it. I just think that Trey Murphy's like good, but he ain't that guy that you're saying like take everything we can possibly offer.
Yeah, like just because the Magic made this trade doesn't mean the Pacers should make that kind of trade. And look how far it got Orlando. What did get them? The 8 seed and a first
Got them
round
right
exit?
where they were before. Yeah,
They
exactly.
didn't really get any better. And maybe a coaching change will help that. I mean, we know how we feel about Jamal Mosley, but still, like, it's just crazy to me. And here's what I'll say. The only thing that I want to say real quick about the Trey Murphy III, because I think this is the last question we have about Trey Murphy III here on part 1, so we're kind of wrapping that up. There's a world where he could go to another team in the East. You mentioned the Pistons earlier. They're another team linked to him, but the Celtics have also been quietly linked to him.
Yes, they
and
have.
Right now, here's the thing, people. Because of the Anthony Simons trade with the Chicago Bulls, the Celtics created a 27.7 traded player exception, which is enough to just bring in Trey Murphy without sending anything out. Now, I still believe that they have to find a way to match that with, like a Sam Hauser or something, because they have to stay under the first apron. But still, like, there's a way they can get that done with all their picks. And right now, they've been very linked to Giannis. And it kind of feels like they might be the front runners. And look, when you include Giannis to the Celtics for Jaylen Brown, they're not going to have to give up a ton of picks because Jaylen Brown is almost as valuable or maybe even more valuable than Giannis. So you're looking at Jaylen Brown probably going to the Portland Trail Blazers, and then the Blazers sending back the Bucks their picks that were included in the Dame trade, plus salary, maybe a young player to go back to Milwaukee. If Boston somehow gets Trey Murphy III, Giannis, and Jason Tatum with Derek White, like, that's a pretty dangerous team to me.
It is
and
dangerous.
All they got to
scary.
do is address their center spot once again, but they would be able to do that or play Giannis at the small ball 5. And there's just ways they can make it happen. And I think they could still probably get Bobby Portis in a deal too if they wanted to, add a player off the bench. So I'm just saying there is maybe a reason to go after Trey Murphy III only to prevent, not only, but partially to prevent another team from getting him as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that there's a scenario that if Boston gets Giannis and Detroit gets Trey Murphy III, all of a sudden, if you're the Pacers,
And Kyrie, maybe.
Yeah. I mean,
that was another rumor. Now, Mark Stein said that the Raptors are, sorry, I keep saying the Raptors because of Usai Ujiri being with Dallas.
Yeah.
The Mavericks are saying that he's off limits. But if there's a way the Pistons are able to add Kyrie plus Trey Murphy III to Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren, that's insane.
Yeah, I mean, how does that all even going to work? Because they still need to sign Jalen Duren. But, like, regardless, yeah, that would obviously be very scary. I don't think it'll happen. I think there's a lot of moving parts there. But that would be, if you're the Pacers, then you start to look at your roster. You say, we're good, but we're just not that great. So, yeah, that'll be interesting.
I think I'm up. Question number 6.
Yeah, what do you got?
All right, John Richardson wants to know, should the Pacers give up some of their depth to add one more impact piece, or is the depth they've built more important?
I don't necessarily think we have a lot of depth. I feel like the depth in the past was a lot better. So, like, when you're talking about, like, if depth is Obi, McConnell, Jarace, Shep, and Huff, and I think is that depth or kind of more like reserves. I feel like it's a little bit of both, you know? So I this is like not what it was before when you had like Obi, McConnell, Matherin, I don't know, whatever, like Buddy Hield, like, you know, a few other guys. Like there used to be more depth on this roster. And I just think that like I am very intrigued with Trey Murphy III. I am. But I just not at the point of having, you know, losing control of every first round pick that we possibly, you know, have, given that we already owe one to the Clippers. So I think if you round out the edges of this team, get some center depth, maybe get some point guard depth, maybe you get like a scorer off the bench, like we've discussed some names before. I think that's good enough to see where you're at with Halliburton coming back to then be able to revisit this at the trade deadline. So you don't have to make all your moves this offseason, but I also don't think the Pacers have like significant depth. And what they do have, they seem a little bit reluctant to part with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think their core 7 is like right. Like we're not going to even touch on that. Like that is part of their depth, and so like that would include if you know we mentioned this. If you trade for Trey Murphy, good grief. If you're trading for Trey Murphy III, you're going to have to include one of those 7 in a trade.
Yeah.
To me personally, and I know a lot of people disagree with this, so I know that I'm on an island over here. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're on the island with me, Facci, but I don't necessarily think of Jarace Walker as a depth piece for this team. I would love to be proven wrong and that he can become a depth piece, but right now we haven't seen enough proof throughout his 3-year tenure. So that is a big thing for me. Now, Sheppard, he's been a little bit more involved in the playoff rotation. I would almost consider him more of a depth piece than Jarace, just because we've seen him do it at the highest level on the biggest stage as kind of like that de facto 9th, 10th man. So we kind of know Shep understands his role, but they're both due for contracts, and I think that's what makes it so difficult. Like, I'm not sold on Huff. I'm not sold on Potter. I'm not sold on Quentin Jackson. I'm not sold on Cam Jones. Anybody else? Like, I think Johnny Furphy to me, like
this is not depth to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm there.
I like
right
Johnny
with
Furphy.
Just,
I like Johnny Furphy a lot, but it's like we saw like 3 months and he was hurt half the time he played.
The flashes, ideas, and potential of Johnny Furphy. Like we really do. But the Pacers, like right now, we can't just say like, oh yeah, no, we'll be good. We can slot him in there. Like, no, first off, he's coming off a torn ACL, so we're gonna need some time on that. And then who even knows when he'll be ready, when he'll be feeling like himself? Is he out of the rotation by then? Like this could be potentially just a lost year for him.
Yeah.
So when you talk about do you view Jarace as depth, view Jarace unfortunately as an asset right now. And I think that's how it is. Yeah, I think he's our trade chip, and we'll see what happens with that. But for right now, I think we're pretty much on the same page with that. So to round out this episode with the last question from KZ Whoops said
KZW Hoops. I don't know which one it is. KZW Hoops makes more sense only because it's basketball.
It does make more sense because I was like, is this Whoops or Hoops? Yeah, so
Whoops.
let's say
maybe it's a play on word. Maybe it's both.
Maybe it is. Says, what would make this offseason a success in your eyes?
It's a really good question, to be honest with you. And right
a lot
now,
of different ways.
It's June 14th, 8:30 as we're recording this. My opinion will change 1,000 times before we get to the offseason. We have about 16 days till June 30th, right? So we're getting closer. There's going to be more moves. There's going to be more news. I just think trying to find some type of score, and I don't know what they're going to do to make that happen. I would encourage everybody to go listen to the Game Theory podcast with Sam Vecini and our good friend Bryce Simon, because they did their Pacers preview on Friday, and they're like, this is going to be a pretty quick one. I don't even know if we'll go 30 minutes on it because the Pacers really don't have much they can do. And one of the things they talked about at length was, could the Pacers look to move off of Jarace Walker and trade him to a team that has a traded player exception that's available, that they could absorb Jarace's contract and not hurt them financially? And one of the teams they threw out there that made some sense was the Memphis Grizzlies. The Memphis Grizzlies also have the 32nd pick in the draft that they acquired years ago from the Pacers. So if the Pacers said, hey, we'll give you a Jarace Walker and you give us pick 32, or you can even go back to what the Pacers did with Obi Toppin, right? Where the Pacers basically just took Obi Toppin off the Knicks' hands and gave them some like 2 bad second-round picks.
Bad picks, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they were not good picks. I mean, they were like,
No.
we don't want to pay Obi. It's your problem now, basically. And honestly, I think it was also Obi saying, give me a chance to play, because he was kind of buried in the rotation. And I think it's a very similar situation here where Jarace Walker is a little bit buried in the, in the front court, playing a depth chart. Like that's the other thing to me. Like, people don't think about, does Jarace want to sign for like $10 million next year and come back to the Pacers and continue to just be a bench guy? Or would he like to go to Memphis and maybe get a chance to start and get a chance to prove that he can be more than what he is here in Indiana, and kind of do what he did last year a little bit more with more of a bigger opportunity, especially with a pave day coming up soon? That could make some sense. So I don't know what the right team is, but if they do that, that could create them the full mid-level exception, which would get them closer to that $15 million. And personally for me, if they can create enough cap space to go out there and be competitors to sign Ayo Dosunmu, that is a great route for me. And then you slide Shep to the 3, but having Ayo, who can also play someone but is still mostly a scoring 2, off the bench and has defensive upside, like, you're getting a better version of Benedict Mathurin, in my opinion.
You very well could. I mean, I think you're getting a more like stable version. Like, Mathurin's going to have like the higher highs, but like sometimes it might just be, ooh, he just didn't really have it.
Is he though? I mean, look at what Ayo did without Anthony Edwards.
No, he looked. That was the best he's like ever looked. Like, he looked unbelievable in the playoffs. Like I said, he averaged. Like,
Matherin's never looked that good.
No,
I mean, he did have 27 and 22.
I know. I just don't think Matherin's like, he's had moments where he was consistent, but he's had a lot of moments where he wasn't consistent. And you look at his Clippers stuff, like some games he was really on, some games he was really off. And I still feel like, I don't know how that's going to shake out. Like, I'm sure they'll bring him back, but I don't think it's just like, he's just going to be slotted into this, like, getting the max type of deal that he could have gotten. We'll see. But yeah, when you mentioned Dosunmu, I think that would be like an awesome type of signing if it works. I don't see him taking anything less than the mid-level, because I feel like there's going to be plenty of teams that have the mid-level to be able to give him. But I also just think that for the Pacers, like, it doesn't need to be making a huge trade for Trey Murphy III just to have a successful offseason. Like, bringing in Zubac like at the deadline was kind of that was their pre-agency move. It really was their big off-season move. It just happened to happen in February. So I don't expect this team to make a massive splash, but I do think that they've always been very smart with their money. And if they do trade Jarace to free up some extra money, I do think they have a real plan in place. And for Jarace Walker, I think, like, I know Memphis maybe isn't this like popular place to be, but he should want to go wherever he can play and have the biggest role. And you have the biggest role, probably going to get the biggest paycheck that you could possibly get. And I feel like, look at the guy like Jermaine O'Neal, like my boy. Anytime I can bring up Jermaine, I'm probably gonna find a way to do it. But look, he needed to get out of Portland. He was buried behind veterans. And when he got that trade to Indiana and got the playing time, he blossomed. He got paid. Everything worked out. I just think for Jarace, I don't see that clear path for him to ever be able to like live up to what he hopes or wants to be in Indiana, and he's still so young that he should bet on himself.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because I'm looking here, like, the Grizzlies made a huge one with the Jaren Jackson trade, so they could use part of that. Dallas made a $20 million one with the Anthony Davis trade. The Bulls made one with the Kevin Huerter trade for $17.9 million. So, like, Chicago's another team that could make a lot of sense to bring in a Jarace Walker, as they're kind of in a rebuild mode. Miami made a traded player exception. Washington, the Pelicans have a $13 million traded player exceptions. They could use that. Atlanta's got 11. Minnesota's got 10. Like, okay, think about this for, Minnesota's perspective, right? Like, we're talking about Mike Conley as, somebody. They got a $10 million traded player exception with Chicago when they traded for Mike Conley. That to me is like, makes a lot of sense. Minnesota needs depth. They need pieces to, put out there, especially if they're going to make a big trade or something like that. There's different ways to go about it. But I think Jarace is making right around 8.9 million, 8.7. Yeah. So you got about 10 teams you can trade with for a traded player exception. And I don't know. There's a lot of reasons that it would make sense. I think Dallas, Chicago, Memphis, Washington, maybe even Atlanta to a certain degree, Minnesota. I think all those teams, Cleveland even to a little bit of a degree, make a little bit of sense. So just throwing that out there because if they want to create that cap space, they can do it, but they don't have to do that. And still they can get somebody in that $6 to $7 million range, Facci, if they want to go that route.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's going to be some options for this team. But yeah, when people say like, hey, I don't think they really have many options this offseason, they're wrong. There's different ways that the Pacers could go. I just don't think that Indiana has to be in a spot where they're emptying out every single draft pick and everything just to be able to go for it right now. They know better than we do about the status of Halliburton. If they really feel like, hey, he's going to be awesome, 100% ready to go. Maybe they do get a little bit bold, but I just don't know how bold they're willing to get day one, in this offseason, whether it's through trade or free agency.
Yeah, absolutely, Facci. Well, that's going to wrap it up for part one of the mailbag. We're calling this the Trey Murphy III trade talk category here. So hopefully you guys enjoyed all of that. But tomorrow we're going to be talking about going all in versus staying patient. So I think that's going to be a fun one there for you. Have another 7 questions to get to. So Facci, let's go ahead and sign off here. If you're thankful for the Pacer fans that sent in these questions, hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers.